I'm standing in my kitchen right now, hands shaking as I write this, because what I'm about to tell you happened 3 days ago. 3 days since I saw something in the Olympic National Forest that science says doesn't exist. 3 days since I watched a creature give birth to something that should be impossible. 3 days since my entire understanding of reality shattered like glass hitting concrete. My name is Rachel Morrison. I'm 28 years old, a wildlife photographer from Seattle, and I need to tell someone what I saw before they find me, before they make me disappear like they've made others disappear. Because I'm not the first person to see this. I'm just the first one stupid enough to go public. Let me take you back to March 18th, 2024. Early spring in Washington state, when the forest is still cold and wet, when most tourists haven't started their hiking season yet, when the woods belong to people like me who prefer solitude over crowds. I'd been camping alone for 4 days in a remote section of the Olympic Peninsula, about 15 miles from the nearest trail marker, documenting elk migration patterns for a conservation project. Solo camping wasn't unusual for me. I've been doing it since I was 21, always prepared, always careful, always respecting the wilderness and its dangers. That morning started normal. I woke up at dawn, made coffee over my camp stove, checked my camera traps that I'd set up around the area to capture nocturnal animal movements. The first 3 cameras showed the usual stuff: deer, raccoons, a black bear passing through around 2 a.m. But the 4th camera, the one I'd positioned near a rocky outcrop about half a mile from my camp, that one showed something that made my blood run cold. At 3:47 a.m., something massive had walked past the camera trap. The motion sensor had triggered, capturing 3 seconds of footage before the creature moved out of frame. But those 3 seconds were enough. It was walking upright, 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark reddish-brown hair that was matted and thick, arms that hung past its knees, a face that the camera barely caught, but what I could see wasn't quite human, wasn't quite ape, something in between. Something that made every rational part of my brain scream impossible, while my gut whispered, you know exactly what that is. Comment below right now. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Something that made you question reality itself? Drop your story. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I sat there staring at my camera screen for probably 20 minutes, replaying those 3 seconds over and over. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. The creature that thousands of people have claimed to see, that science dismisses as folklore, that Reddit threads and conspiracy theorists obsess over. It had walked past my camera trap 7 hours ago, and based on the direction it was heading, it was moving deeper into the forest, away from any human trails. Every logical part of me said to pack up my gear and get the hell out of there, but the photographer in me, the part that had chosen this career because I wanted to capture the extraordinary, that part was already planning. If I could track this creature, if I could get clear photographs or video evidence, I wouldn't just be documenting wildlife anymore. I'd be proving the existence of something the scientific community had declared mythological. This would be the biggest discovery in cryptozoology history. This would change everything. So I made a choice. I grabbed my professional camera with a telephoto lens, my backup camera, extra batteries, my survival pack, and I started tracking. The creature had left traces, broken branches at about 7 feet high, disturbed undergrowth, and most tellingly, footprints. Massive footprints, at least 17 inches long, pressed deep into the muddy soil near a creek bed. 5 toes, distinctly different from bear tracks, and with a stride length that suggested something walking upright with legs much longer than human proportions. I followed those tracks for 3 hours, moving slowly, carefully, stopping frequently to photograph the evidence and mark my GPS coordinates. The terrain got rougher as I went deeper into the forest, climbing into areas where old-growth trees created such dense canopy that sunlight barely penetrated. This was true wilderness, the kind of place where you could disappear and no one would find you for months, maybe years, maybe never. Around noon, the tracks led me to a ravine, a steep-sided valley with a small stream running through the bottom. And that's when I heard it. The sound that will haunt me for the rest of my life. A vocalization that started low and guttural, then rose to a scream that echoed off the ravine walls. Not quite human, not quite animal. Pain. That's what I heard in that sound. Raw, primal pain. My first instinct was to run. Every horror movie I'd ever watched, every true crime podcast about people who died in the wilderness, every rational thought in my head was screaming at me to turn around and get out of there. But I'd come this far. I'd tracked this creature for hours. And that sound, as terrifying as it was, told me something was wrong. Something was happening. So I did the stupidest, bravest, most reckless thing I've ever done. I climbed down into that ravine. The descent took 15 minutes of careful climbing, using tree roots and rocks for handholds, my camera bag banging against my back with every movement. The sound came again, closer now, and I could hear something else underneath it. A rhythm, like breathing but labored, struggling. When I reached the bottom of the ravine and moved through the underbrush toward the source of the sound, nothing could have prepared me for what I found. She was massive, had to be over 7 feet tall even lying down, with shoulders broader than any human I'd ever seen. The reddish-brown hair I'd seen in the camera footage covered her entire body except for her face, hands, and feet, which were darker, almost leathery. And she was pregnant. Extremely pregnant. Her abdomen was distended, and as I watched from behind a fallen log about 30 feet away, she was in active labor. A Bigfoot, a real, living Bigfoot, was giving birth less than 50 feet from where I crouched, frozen in shock and awe and terror. Her face was contorted in pain, and she was making those sounds again. That awful combination of human-like screaming and animal vocalization. She was alone. No mate, no other creatures around her. Just this female in the wilderness, going through something that should have been impossible because officially, scientifically, she didn't exist. I don't know how long I watched. Minutes, hours, time lost meaning as I witnessed something no modern human had likely ever seen. The creature was clearly in distress, her labor not progressing normally. She kept reaching down toward her abdomen, then pulling back, then trying again. Something was wrong. And despite every logical thought telling me to stay hidden, to just document this and get out, I couldn't watch a living being suffer without trying to help. Hit that subscribe button if you want to know what happened next, and drop a like if your heart is racing as hard as mine was in that moment. Because what came next, what I saw her give birth to, it wasn't what anyone would expect. It wasn't what should be possible. I've delivered animals before. I grew up on a farm in eastern Washington, helped with difficult births, horses, cattle, even assisted a veterinarian with a breached calf once. I'm not a doctor, not trained in any official capacity, but I understood the basics of labor, of what could go wrong, of when intervention might save a life. And watching this creature struggle, watching her exhaust herself trying to deliver offspring that wasn't coming, something in me shifted. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a cryptid or a legend or myth. She was a mother in trouble. I stood up slowly, hands raised, making myself visible. The creature's head snapped toward me. Her eyes, God, her eyes were so human, so intelligent, widening in what I recognized as fear. She made a warning sound, lower, threatening, but she didn't move toward me. She was too weak, too focused on her labor. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, my voice shaking. Stupid, right? Talking to a creature that probably didn't understand English, that could probably rip me apart with one hand if she wanted to. But I kept talking anyway, keeping my voice low and calm, the way you talk to a frightened animal. "I can help. I've done this before. Please let me help you." I took one step forward. She watched me, her breathing ragged, her body trembling from exhaustion. Another step, she didn't move. Another step, and I was close enough to smell her. Earthy, musky, like wet fur and cedar. Close enough to see the tears streaming down her face. Yes, tears. She was crying. That's when I knew for certain this wasn't just an animal. This was a person, different from me, from any human, but a person with emotions, with intelligence, with the capacity to suffer and to feel and to fear. And she was dying. If I didn't help her, she and her baby would both die here in this ravine, and the world would never know they existed. I stood up slowly, talking the whole time, explaining what I was going to do, even though she probably couldn't understand the words. But maybe she understood the tone, the intention. Because when I knelt beside her and gently placed my hand on her abdomen to feel the position of the infant, she didn't attack me. She looked directly into my eyes, and I swear to God, she nodded. Permission. Trust. A desperate mother allowing a stranger to help because she had no other choice. The baby was breech. I could feel it through her abdomen, positioned wrong, unable to descend through the birth canal. Without intervention, without someone manually repositioning the infant or assisting the delivery, both mother and child would die. I dealt with breech bursts in cattle before, knew the risks, knew the procedure. But this wasn't a cow. This was a creature I didn't understand, with anatomy I could only guess at. And one wrong move could kill them both. Or she could kill me for trying. Okay, I said to myself, more than to her, okay, we're going to do this. When the next contraction comes, I need you to push. Do you understand? Push. I demonstrated, bearing down, hoping the universal language of childbirth would translate. Her eyes locked on mine, and I saw understanding there. She understood. The next contraction came. She screamed, that awful sound echoing through the ravine, and I worked quickly, reaching in. God, I'm going to spare you the graphic details, but understand this was the most terrifying, disgusting, incredible thing I'd ever done. I had my hands inside a creature that wasn't supposed to exist, trying to reposition an infant that science said was impossible, while a 7-foot-tall mother gripped my shoulder with enough force that I thought my collarbone might break. Again, I gasped as the contraction ended. One more time. You can do this. Push. Another contraction. Another scream. And then, suddenly, movement. Progress. The infant was coming. I guided it carefully, supporting the head as it emerged, and then the shoulders, and then it was out. The baby was out. I caught it in my arms, this tiny, impossible creature, covered in vernix and blood, and absolutely, completely silent. No cry, no movement, not breathing. No, I whispered, no, no, no. Come on, baby, breathe. I did what you do with any newborn that's not breathing. I cleared its airways, stimulated its chest, willed it with every ounce of desperation in my body to take a breath. The mother was watching me with those intelligent eyes, understanding that her child was in trouble, making soft sounds that were clearly distress calls. Come on, I begged, tears streaming down my face. Please, please breathe. And then it gasped, a small, weak gasp, but a gasp, breathing, alive. I nearly collapsed with relief. But as I looked down at the infant in my arms, at this tiny, impossible creature that shouldn't exist, I realized something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The baby wasn't fully covered in hair like its mother. Large patches of its skin were visible, pink and human-like. Its face, the structure was different, more human, less pronounced brow ridge, smaller jaw. And its hands, the proportions were wrong too. Too human, too delicate. This wasn't just a Bigfoot infant. This was something else, something mixed, something that made my blood run cold as the implications crashed over me. This baby was a hybrid. I knelt there, in the mud and blood, holding this impossible creature in my arms, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. A hybrid, half Bigfoot, half human. The baby couldn't have been more than 6 pounds, tiny compared to what a full Bigfoot infant should be. Its skin was mottled, patches of fine reddish hair like its mother, patches of smooth, pale skin like mine. The face was the most disturbing part. The features were caught somewhere between species, creating something that looked almost human, but not quite. Almost Bigfoot, but not quite. Something entirely new. The mother was reaching for her baby, making soft, cooing sounds that transcended species. I placed the infant on her chest carefully, watching as she cradled it with surprising gentleness for hands that large and powerful. She examined her baby, running her fingers over its face, its body, and I saw something in her expression that I'll never forget. Confusion, sadness, recognition that something was different, something was wrong with her offspring. She looked up at me then, and in that moment of eye contact, I understood something that made my hands start shaking all over again. She knew. She knew her baby wasn't fully her species. She knew what had happened to her. And the pain in her eyes wasn't just from labor anymore. It was something deeper, darker, more terrible than physical pain. "Oh my God," I whispered. Someone did this to you. A human did this to you." Drop a comment right now if you're starting to understand what I'm saying, if you're putting the pieces together, because this story is about to get so much darker than you thought. She didn't respond, of course, but she didn't need to. The evidence was right there in her arms, this hybrid infant that shouldn't exist, that could only exist if a human male and a female Bigfoot had. I felt sick. Actually physically sick. Because this wasn't some mystical interspecies love story. Looking at this creature's eyes, at the trauma written in every line of her face, I knew exactly what had happened. Rape. A Bigfoot had been raped by a human being. The implications were staggering. This meant that humans and Bigfoot were genetically compatible enough to produce offspring. This meant that somewhere out there was a human who knew these creatures existed, who had found one, who had violated it, and who had left it alone to deal with the consequences. This meant that the government or scientists or someone had to know about this possibility, about this compatibility, and they'd kept it secret. I pulled out my camera with trembling hands. I needed to document this. The mother, the baby, the evidence of what had been done. But as I raised the lens, the mother's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Not violently, but firmly. She shook her head, an unmistakable human gesture of no. She didn't want me to photograph her baby. She was protecting it, even now, even from someone who just helped save its life. "I won't," I promised, lowering the camera. "I won't photograph the baby, but I need evidence. People need to know you exist. They need to know what happened to you. They need to know this is possible." She watched me for a long moment, then slowly released my wrist. She understood something, I think, that I wasn't a threat, that maybe, just maybe, telling this story could help, or maybe she was just too exhausted to fight anymore. I photographed her instead, from a respectful distance. Her face, her body, the setting. Proof that she existed, that she was real, that everything the skeptics dismissed as folklore was absolutely, terrifyingly real. The baby nursed, latching onto her breast naturally despite its mixed genetics, and the mother held it close, rocking slightly, making sounds that were universal across all species that care for their young. Love, protection, a mother's instinct to keep her child safe. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Voices. Human voices. Male voices. Coming from the ridge above the ravine. "The tracks lead down here. She can't have gone far, not in her condition." The words drifted down, and I saw the mother's entire body tense. She recognized those voices. She knew who they were. And the absolute terror that flooded her expression told me everything I needed to know. They were coming for her. They'd been tracking her, and she was too weak to run. "We need to hide you," I whispered urgently. "Can you move? Can you stand?" She tried, but her legs couldn't support her weight after the ordeal of labor. She'd lost blood, was exhausted, weakened. She wasn't going anywhere, and those voices were getting closer. I could hear boots crunching through underbrush, branches breaking, at least 3 different men from the sound of it. I made a decision in about 2 seconds flat. I grabbed my pack, pulled out my emergency blanket, the reflective silver kind that blocks thermal imaging, and spread it over her and the baby. "Stay completely still," I told her. "Don't make a sound. I'll handle this." She looked at me with those intelligent eyes, understanding what I was doing, understanding that I was about to put myself between her and whatever danger was coming. She reached out and touched my face gently, a gesture of gratitude, of trust. Then she pulled the blanket over herself and the baby and went completely silent. I climbed back up the ravine slope, my heart hammering, my mind racing through what I was going to say, how I was going to explain what I was doing here. I reached the top just as 3 men came through the trees. They were dressed in tactical gear, not quite military, but close. Black pants, black jackets, no identifying patches or badges. The kind of uniforms that said official but not official, if you know what I mean. All 3 carried rifles, and all 3 stopped dead when they saw me. "Who are you?" the lead man demanded. He was maybe 40, with a scar down his left cheek and eyes that were cold, calculating, dangerous. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "This is public land. I'm photographing wildlife. What are you, park rangers?" The lead man's expression didn't change. "We're tracking a dangerous animal that's been spotted in this area. For your safety, you need to leave immediately." "What kind of animal?" I asked, playing dumb. "Bear? Cougar?" "Classified," one of the other men said. He was younger, nervous, his hand tight on his rifle. "Ma'am, this is a federal matter. You need to vacate this area right now." A federal matter, which meant these weren't just hunters or random lunatics. These were government, official government, tracking a Bigfoot that they knew existed, that they'd known existed for who knows how long, and from their equipment, their urgency, their weapons, they weren't here to study it. They were here to capture it or kill it.
"I haven't seen anything unusual," I lied. "Just deer and some elk. I've been here for 4 days and haven't encountered any dangerous animals." The lead man studied me for a long moment. "You're alone out here. No one knows where you are." The way he said it made my skin crawl. It wasn't concern for my safety. It was calculation. Assessing whether I was a loose end, whether anyone would miss me if I disappeared. "My boyfriend knows exactly where I am," I lied again. "I check in with him every night via satellite phone. He's expecting a call in about 2 hours, and if he doesn't get it, he'll call search and rescue. They'll have helicopters out here by nightfall." The lie was smooth, confident, and I saw something shift in the lead man's expression. I wasn't an isolated target anymore. I was connected, traceable, a problem if anything happened to me. "Then you should head back to your camp and make that call," he said finally. "This area isn't safe. We're tracking something that's injured and unpredictable. For your own safety, pack up and get out of this section of the forest. Today." "What are you really tracking?" I asked, pushing my luck. "Because you guys look pretty serious for just an injured bear."
The third man, who hadn't spoken yet, stepped forward. He was older, maybe 50, with the bearing of someone who'd been military for a long time. "Miss Morrison," he said, and my blood went cold. He knew my name. How did he know my name? If you're creeped out right now, hit that like button and comment "what the hell" if you're as freaked out as I was, because it gets worse. "How do you know my name?" I demanded. "We checked your camp while you were out here tracking things you shouldn't be tracking," the older man said calmly. "Seattle address on your driver's license? Wildlife photographer specializing in endangered species, working on an elk migration project, camping permit registered to you. We know exactly who you are, Miss Morrison, and we know you've been following tracks you shouldn't have found." They'd been in my camp, gone through my stuff. They know I'd been tracking the Bigfoot, which meant they'd probably seen my camera trap footage, had maybe even watched me descend into this ravine. They knew. They knew I'd found her, and they were deciding right now whether to let me walk away or whether I was too much of a risk. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, doubling down on the lie. "I've been photographing elk, that's it. Whatever you think I found, you're wrong." The lead man with the scar smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen, Miss Morrison. You're going to go back to your camp, you're going to pack up your gear, and you're going to leave this forest today. You're going to delete any photos or videos you've taken in the last 24 hours. You're going to forget you were ever in this ravine, and you're going to never, ever speak about what you think you might have seen. Do you understand?" "And if I don't?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Then you'll be reported as a missing person," the older man said matter-of-factly. "Solo camper who didn't check in with her boyfriend, didn't return from her photography expedition, tragic accident in the wilderness. These things happen all the time. People get lost, fall into ravines, get attacked by wildlife. It would be very sad, very unfortunate, but these things happen." A threat, a direct, undeniable threat. Comply or disappear. And they had the authority, the weapons, and the isolation to make it happen. But here's the thing about me. I've never been good at doing what I'm told when I know something is wrong. Call it stupidity, call it principle, call it whatever you want. But I wasn't going to let them take that mother and her baby. I wasn't going to let whatever they planned to do to her happen without a fight. "I understand," I said, meeting the lead man's eyes. "I'll pack up and leave today. Delete everything. Forget I was here. You won't have any problems from me." He nodded slowly. "Smart choice. We'll escort you back to your camp to make sure you get out safely. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you on the way." Translation: "We're going to watch you delete your evidence and make sure you actually leave." But they'd made a mistake. They'd revealed that they knew about my camp, which meant they'd left it to come track the mother, which meant my gear was still there, unguarded. And more importantly, my satellite communication device was still there, the one I told them about but didn't actually have with me, the one that could send messages even from the most remote locations, the one that could send photos. Let's go then. The sooner I'm out of here, the better. As we walked back toward my camp, me in front, the three men behind me, armed and alert, I thought about the mother and baby hidden under that emergency blanket in the ravine. How long could she stay quiet? How long before they found her? I needed to buy her time. I needed to get these men away from her, give her a chance to recover enough to move, to hide somewhere they couldn't find her. We reached my camp 20 minutes later. Everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning, except someone had clearly gone through my tent. My belongings were subtly disturbed, rearranged by someone searching for something. "Start packing," the lead man ordered, "and hand over all your cameras and electronic devices. We need to verify that you delete everything like you promised." I handed over my main camera, the one I'd used to photograph the mother. They scrolled through the images, and I watched their faces as they saw her. The proof, the undeniable evidence that Bigfoot existed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the older man looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You got close. Closer than anyone has in decades. These creatures are incredibly elusive. The fact that you tracked one, that you got these photos, that's actually impressive." "What are you going to do to her?" I asked. "She just gave birth. She's weak. She needs—" "That's not your concern," the lead man interrupted. "Your concern is getting out of here and keeping your mouth shut. Now delete these photos. All of them." I deleted them, one by one, watching years of cryptozoology mystery disappear from my camera screen. The mother's face, her body, the proof that she existed. Gone. The men watched carefully, making sure I wasn't faking it, making sure every image was truly deleted. But what they didn't know was that I'm a professional photographer, and professionals always back up their work. My camera had been uploading wirelessly to my laptop all day. Every photo I took automatically saved to a hard drive that was hidden in a false bottom of my pack. They could make me delete every photo from my camera, but the evidence still existed. The proof was still safe. "Good," the lead man said when the last photo was gone. "Now pack up everything and get out. We'll watch you drive away, and then you'll never come back here. You'll never speak about this. You'll never try to contact anyone about what you saw. Because if you do, we'll know, and you'll disappear. Understand?" I understood. I understood that these men were dangerous, that they represented something bigger and more secretive than just a few guys in the woods. I understood that the government had been covering up Bigfoot's existence for decades, maybe longer. And I understood that the mother and her hybrid baby were in terrible danger. Subscribe right now if you want to know how this ends. Comment, "Save them," if you think I should have fought harder. Comment, "Run," if you think I should have just left. Because what I did next, it either saved them or doomed us all. I packed up my camp in 30 minutes, moving slowly, deliberately, giving the mother as much time as possible to recover and move from that ravine. The three men watched my every move, never more than 10 feet away, hands always near their weapons. When my truck was loaded and I was sitting in the driver's seat, the lead man leaned in my window. "Remember, Miss Morrison, silence or consequences." I nodded, started my engine, and drove away down the Forest Service road, watching them in my rearview mirror until they disappeared into the trees. But I didn't drive home. I drove to the nearest town with cell service, parked outside a coffee shop with public Wi-Fi, and I uploaded everything. Every photo, every GPS coordinate, every detail about those men and what they were doing. I sent it to environmental groups, cryptozoology organizations, news outlets, my personal social media accounts, even conspiracy theory forums. I didn't care who believed me. I just needed the information out there. Public. Impossible to suppress. Because here's what I realized in that moment. They threatened me because they were scared. Scared of exposure. Scared of people knowing the truth. Scared that their secret operation, their hidden agenda, would be revealed. And the best protection I had wasn't silence. It was noise. Lots and lots of noise. If I disappeared now, after putting all this information online, it would only confirm everything I'd said. It would make me a martyr, make the story bigger. They were more likely to leave me alone if I was a public figure than if I was a silent victim. The uploads finished. Within an hour, my story was spreading. Within 2 hours, it had been shared thousands of times. Within 4 hours, major news outlets were picking it up. Wildlife photographer claims Bigfoot encounter. Government cover-up of cryptid species. Hybrid creature evidence surfaces. Some people believed me. Most people called it a hoax, but everyone was talking about it. And that was the point. My phone started ringing. News stations wanting interviews, scientists wanting to examine my evidence. Cryptozoology enthusiasts calling me a hero, skeptics calling me a fraud, and one call from a blocked number that I almost didn't answer. "Miss Morrison," a woman's voice said when I picked up, not one of the men from the forest. Someone new, someone whose voice was calm, professional, cold. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I work for an organization that monitors unusual biological phenomena. We need to talk about what you saw." I'm not interested in talking to anyone from the government, not an organization that's been covering up the existence of an entire species, not people who threaten photographers for telling the truth. "We're not with the government," Dr. Chen said. "We're independent researchers who've been studying these creatures for 30 years. And Miss Morrison, you've just made a very dangerous mistake. By going public, by exposing that hybrid infant, you've painted a target on that mother and child. There are people, bad people, who will do anything to get their hands on proof of genetic compatibility between species. People who see that hybrid baby as a commodity, as a research subject, as something to be bought and sold." My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that mother and child are in more danger now than they were when you left them. And I'm saying that if you actually care about their welfare, you need to help us find them before the wrong people do. Because trust me, Miss Morrison, those 3 men in tactical gear, they're the least of your worries right now." I said in that coffee shop parking lot, phone pressed against my ear, watching people walk by with their lattes and their normal problems, completely unaware that I was having a conversation about genetic hybrids and species survival. "How do I know you're not just another government agency trying to silence me?" I asked Dr. Chen. "How do I know this isn't another threat?" "You don't," she admitted. "But consider this. If I wanted to silence you, threatening you clearly doesn't work. You just prove that by going public. And if I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Miss Morrison, I've dedicated my entire career to protecting these creatures. I've lost colleagues, lost funding, been discredited and mocked by the scientific community. But I've never stopped believing they deserve to exist in peace. That mother needs help. That baby needs help. And whether you like it or not, you're the only person who knows exactly where they are." She was right. I'd been so focused on protecting myself, on getting the evidence out there, that I hadn't thought about what my actions might trigger. If bad people, whoever they were, knew that hybrids were possible, they'd stop at nothing to find that baby. For research, for profit, for proof. That infant was worth millions to the right buyer, billions in potential genetic research applications. "What do you want me to do?" I asked quietly. "I want you to take me back to that ravine," Dr. Chen said. "I have a team ready to mobilize. We can extract the mother and child, bring them to a secure facility where they'll be protected, studied ethically, and kept safe from people who would exploit them. But we need to move fast. Every hour that passes is another hour for the wrong people to find them first. Comment, 'Trust her,' or 'It's a trap,' right now. Tell me what you would do." Because I had about 30 seconds to make a decision that would determine whether that mother and baby lived or died. "I need guarantees," I said quietly. "I need to know they won't be locked in cages, experimented on, treated like lab animals. I need to know that baby won't be taken from its mother. I need your word." "You have it," Dr. Chen said without hesitation. "I'm sending you coordinates for a meeting location. 1 hour. Come alone. Bring all your evidence and GPS data from the encounter. And, Miss Morrison, thank you. You may have just saved their lives." She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone as a text came through with map coordinates for a location about 20 miles north of where I was. 1 hour, alone. Every true crime instinct I had was screaming that this was a trap, that I was about to become another missing person statistic. But the alternative, leaving that mother and baby to whatever fate awaited them, that wasn't an option I could live with. I drove to the coordinates, a rest stop off Highway 101, deliberately public, with security cameras and witnesses. If Dr. Chen was planning something sinister, at least there would be evidence. A black SUV was already waiting when I arrived, and a woman in her 50s stepped out. She looked exactly like you'd expect a wildlife biologist to look. Practical clothing, no makeup, graying hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes that had spent decades studying things most people couldn't see. "Miss Morrison?" She extended her hand. "Dr. Sarah Chen. Thank you for trusting me." "I haven't decided if I trust you yet," I said, but I shook her hand anyway. "Show me credentials. Show me proof you're who you say you are." She pulled out identification, academic credentials from 3 different universities, published papers on primate behavior and cryptozoology. She showed me photos of herself with Jane Goodall, with Diane Fossey in the 1980s, with teams of researchers in various wilderness locations. She showed me documentation of her organization, the North American Cryptid Conservation Project, a privately funded research group that had been operating since 1994. "We've known about them for decades," Dr. Chen said quietly, leaning against her vehicle. "Small populations scattered across the Pacific Northwest, maybe 300 individuals total. They're incredibly intelligent, incredibly elusive, and incredibly endangered. Habitat loss, climate change, genetic bottlenecking from small population sizes. They're dying out, and most people don't even know they exist." Those men in the forest, the tactical team, who were they? "Government contractors," Dr. Chen replied. "There's a Black Ops program that's been tracking these creatures since the 1960s. Official policy is to maintain deniability, keep the public thinking Bigfoot is a myth while simultaneously monitoring and controlling the populations. Sometimes they relocate individuals who get too close to civilization. Sometimes let's just say not all interventions are humanitarian." "They were going to kill her," I said, and it wasn't a question. Dr. Chen's expression confirmed it. "A pregnant female, alone, possibly injured, leaving tracks that could be found? Yes. Their standard protocol would be termination. Too much risk of discovery. But that hybrid baby changes everything. That's unprecedented. That's proof of genetic compatibility that opens up possibilities, both wonderful and terrifying." She pulled out a tablet and showed me images I'd never seen before. Bigfoot specimens, some alive, some dead, documented over decades. Medical scans showing internal anatomy. Genetic analysis showing their relationship to humans and other primates. Evidence of intelligence, tool use, language, cultural transmission of knowledge. They're people, Miss Morrison. Different from us, but people. They deserve protection. They deserve rights. That's what my organization fights for. "And that baby?" I asked. "What happens to a hybrid? What kind of life can it have?" "That depends on whether we reach them first," Dr. Chen said grimly. "Their organizations, I won't name them because you don't need that target on your back, but there are groups that would pay obscene amounts for access to that child. Genetic research facilities that operate outside ethical oversight. Private collectors who see cryptids as property. Even government programs that would want to study the implications of human cryptid hybridization. That baby is the most valuable creature on Earth, and probably the most endangered." I thought about the mother's face, about the gentleness with which she'd held her strange baby, about the fear in her eyes when she'd heard those voices. She'd protected her child despite its differences. She'd accepted it, loved it. And now I'd potentially painted a target on both of them by going public. "How long do we have?" I asked. "Hours, maybe. Maybe less. The tactical team knows that area, and they know you were there. They'll go back, they'll search more thoroughly. And if they find the mother and baby before we do..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "Then let's go," I said. "I'll take you to the ravine. But I'm coming with you. I need to see this through. I need to know they're safe." Dr. Chen nodded. "I wouldn't have it any other way. You saved their lives once. Let's make sure it wasn't for nothing."
Hit that like button right now if you're invested in this story, and drop a comment telling me,
Would you risk your life to save a creature that isn't even your species? Because that's exactly what I was about to do. We drove back toward Olympic National Forest and Dr. Chen's SUV, which turned out to be equipped like a mobile research station. Medical supplies, tranquilizer equipment, communication gear, even what looked like a portable containment unit designed for large primates. In the back seat were two more people, a veterinarian named Marcus and a wildlife tracker named Julie, both members of Dr. Chen's team who had been studying Bigfoot populations for over a decade. How many people know about this? I asked as we drove. About Bigfoot being real? More than you think, Marcus said from the back. Every park ranger who's worked the deep wilderness areas for more than 5 years has probably seen something. Native American tribes have known for centuries. Their folklore isn't folklore, it's historical documentation. There are scientists, military personnel, government officials who know, but official acknowledgement would cause chaos. Religious implications, legal implications about land use and habitat protection, tourism and economic impacts. It's easier to maintain the mystery. Until someone like you comes along and forces the conversation, Julie added. Your photos, your story, that's going to change things, whether anyone wants it to or not. The question is whether it changes things for the better or the worse for these creatures. We reached the Forest Service road where I had been camped, and I guided Dr. Chen to the trailhead that would take us back to the ravine. It was late afternoon now, maybe 4 hours since I'd left the mother and baby. 4 hours for them to recover, to move, or to be found by the tactical team. 4 hours that felt like an eternity. The hike took 45 minutes, moving as quickly as we could through rough terrain while carrying equipment. My legs burned, my lungs ached from the altitude and exertion, but I pushed forward. We reached the ridge above the ravine just as the sun was starting to set, golden light filtering through the trees, creating long shadows that made everything look otherworldly. "Down there," I whispered, pointing to the spot where I'd left her, under the emergency blanket by that fallen cedar. We descended carefully, quietly, watching for any signs of the tactical team or other threats. The ravine was silent except for the sound of the stream and birds settling in for the night. When we reached the bottom, my heart sank. The emergency blanket was still there, silver and reflective in the fading light, but it was empty. The mother and baby were gone. "No," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside the blanket. "No, where did she go? She was too weak to move. She couldn't have... Look!" Julie interrupted, pointing at the ground. Tracks. Large footprints, pressed into the soft earth, heading downstream, uneven and dragging slightly. The mother had moved, but she was injured, struggling. And beside her larger tracks were smaller ones, much smaller. Human-sized boots, multiple sets. "The tactical team found them," Dr. Chen said grimly, examining the tracks. "These boot prints are fresh, maybe an hour old. They tracked her when she tried to move, and now..." She pulled out her radio and spoke quickly into it. "Base, this is Chen. We have a situation. Target has been located by hostile team. Needs satellite tracking of all vehicles in this area. Immediate response team to these coordinates. This is a code red extraction." "What does that mean?" I asked. "What are they going to do to her?" Marcus was already pulling medical supplies from his pack. "Depends on who caught them. If it's the government contractors, they'll transport them to a facility somewhere. Study them, probably separate the mother and baby for individual analysis. The baby especially, they'll want to understand the hybrid genetics, see if it's viable, if it can reproduce eventually. It won't be pleasant, but they'll probably survive." "And if it's not the government contractors?" I asked. Dr. Chen's expression was dark. "Then we're in a race against people who see them as commodities, people who sell them to the highest bidder, private research facilities, collectors, people who don't care about ethics or welfare. If those people get them, the mother and baby will disappear into a system where no one will ever find them again." We followed the tracks downstream, moving faster now, less concerned about stealth and more focused on speed. The prints led us along the creek for maybe half a mile before we found something that made my blood run cold. A clearing. Signs of a struggle, disturbed earth, broken branches, and worst of all, blood. Not a lot, but enough to show that something violent had happened here. Tranquilizer dart, Julie said, picking up a small cylinder from the ground. They sedated her here, probably ambushed her while she was trying to escape with the baby. Which way did they take them? I asked, desperately. There has to be a trail, vehicle tracks, something. Julie studied the ground, then pointed north. Vehicle tracks here. Heavy truck, probably military-style transport, heading toward the old logging roads. If they're smart, they'll use those roads to avoid main highways, take them to a secondary location before moving them to wherever they're really going. Dr. Chen was already on her radio again, coordinating with her team, requesting aerial surveillance, trying to mobilize resources, but I could see the worry in her face. We were hours behind. The mother and baby could be anywhere by now. We'll find them, Dr. Chen said, seeing my expression. My organization has resources, contacts, ways of tracking these operations. But Miss Morrison, you need to understand something. Once they're in the system, once they're classified as government assets or private property, getting them back becomes almost impossible. The law doesn't protect creatures that officially don't exist. Then we make them exist officially. We push harder, more evidence, more publicity, more pressure until the government has to acknowledge them, until there are laws protecting them, until that mother and baby have legal rights. That could take years, Marcus pointed out. Years they'll spend in captivity. Years that baby will spend growing up in a lab instead of in the wild with its mother. If we push too hard, too fast, we might make things worse for them, not better. We hiked back to the vehicles as darkness fell, defeated and exhausted. My body ached, but it was nothing compared to the guilt crushing my chest. I'd saved them from death during birth, only to lead them to capture. My good intentions, my desire to document and protect had resulted in exactly what that mother feared most, humans taking her baby. Back at Dr. Chen's vehicle, she pulled up satellite imagery on her tablet, showing vehicle movements in the area over the last few hours. There, she said, pointing to a dot moving north on logging roads. Heavy vehicle left the area about an hour and a half ago. By now, they're probably, yes, there. They stopped at this location. She zoomed in on what looked like an abandoned industrial facility about 50 miles north of where we were. What is that place? I asked. Old timber processing plant, Julie said, pulling up records on her laptop. Closed in 2008, supposedly abandoned, but there's been suspicious activity there on and off for years. Power usage that doesn't match an empty facility, vehicle traffic that doesn't make sense. We've suspected it might be one of the black site facilities used for cryptid containment and research.
Then that's where they are, I said. We have to go there. We have to get them out. Miss Morrison, Dr. Chen said carefully, these facilities are heavily guarded. We can't just walk in and demand they release 2 captive cryptids. We need time to build a legal case, to gather evidence, to... We don't have time, I interrupted. That baby is hours old. It needs its mother. It needs proper care. And that mother just went through a traumatic birth, and now she's been drugged and captured. Every hour we wait is another hour they're suffering. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to use all those resources and contacts you mentioned, and I'm going to do what I do best, document everything and make it public. Dr. Chen studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. No heroics, no getting ourselves killed or arrested. Agreed? Agreed, I lied. Because I already knew that if it came down to choosing between following the rules and saving that mother and baby, I was going to break every rule that existed. We drove to the industrial facility under cover of darkness, parking a mile away and coaching on foot with night vision equipment that Dr. Chen's team provided. The facility was massive,
Multiple buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Lights blazed in several windows, and I could see guards patrolling the perimeter. Not rent-a-cops. Real security. Armed. Professional. At least a dozen guards, Julie whispered as we watched from the tree line. Plus, whoever's inside working. We're looking at military-level security for a supposedly abandoned facility. Which confirms they're keeping something valuable inside, Marcus added. The question is, where? This place is huge. They could be in any of those buildings. I pulled out my camera, the one with the long-range lens, and started photographing everything. The guards, the vehicles, the facility layout. Evidence that this place was operating despite being officially closed. Evidence that something was being hidden here. There, I said suddenly, zooming in on a loading dock on the east side of the complex. That truck. It's the same model that left the forest. The tire treads match. Dr. Chen checked her thermal imaging device, scanning the facility for heat signatures. I'm reading multiple large heat sources in that building, much larger than human-sized. Could be them. Or could be equipment, Julie cautioned. Could be generators or machinery. Only one way to find out, I said, and before anyone could stop me, I was moving toward the fence line. Morrison, wait, Dr. Chen hissed, but I was already running, keeping low, using the shadows. I reached the fence and found what I was looking for, a drainage culvert that ran under the barrier, probably for runoff water. It was tight, muddy, disgusting, but it was big enough for a person to crawl through. I went in headfirst, my camera bag scraping against concrete, my breathing loud in the confined space. 30 seconds of claustrophobic panic, and then I was through. Inside the facility perimeter, completely exposed if anyone looked my way. I sprinted to the nearest building and pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. This was insane. This was stupid. This was going to get me killed or arrested. But I thought about that mother's face, about her trusting me to help, and I kept moving. I found a window, grimy but transparent enough to see inside. And what I saw made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped my camera. The mother was there, in a cage. A massive reinforced cage designed for large primates, but a cage nonetheless. She was conscious, sitting with her back against the bars, and in her arms was the baby. They were alive. They were together. But the mother's expression, God, the look on her face, complete despair. The realization that she was trapped, that her child would grow up in captivity, that the freedom she'd known was gone forever. I raised my camera and started shooting, photo after photo, documenting everything. The cage, the facility, the mother and baby, the equipment around them that looked medical and invasive. Evidence that would blow this entire operation wide open if I could just get it out to the public. Then someone grabbed my shoulder and I nearly screamed. I spun around to find Dr. Chen, Julie, and Marcus behind me, all looking furious. Are you insane? Dr. Chen whispered harshly. You could have been shot. Look, I said, pointing through the window. They're here. They're alive. We have to get them out. Dr. Chen looked through the window, her expression shifting from anger to determination. All right. Change of plans. We extract them now, but we do it my way. She pulled out her phone and made a call. This is Dr. Sarah Chen with the North American Cryptid Conservation Project. I need to speak to whoever's in charge of this facility immediately. Yes, I'll wait. She put the call on speaker, and after a moment, a male voice came through. This is Director Jameson. Who is this and how did you get this number? My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm standing outside your facility right now with photographic evidence of a legally detained protected species. I know you're holding a Bigfoot mother and hybrid infant that were captured this evening from Olympic National Forest. And I'm giving you one chance to release them voluntarily before I send this evidence to every news outlet, government agency, and animal rights organization in existence. Silence on the other end. Then, Dr. Chen, I'm familiar with your work, and I'm afraid I can't release federal assets based on threats from a private organization. They're not federal assets, Dr. Chen said coldly. They're living beings. And that hybrid infant, that's proof of forced captivity that produced genetic experimentation. Rape, Director Jameson. That mother was raped by a human being. And now you're holding her and her child in cages. How do you think that's going to look when CNN runs the story? Another pause. You're bluffing. You don't have evidence of any of that. Wrong, I said, stepping forward. I'm Rachel Morrison. I'm the photographer who assisted that birth. I have documentation of everything, including the hybrid baby's birth. And I've already sent copies to multiple secure locations. If anything happens to us, if those creatures aren't released, if we mysteriously disappear, it all goes public automatically. You have 1 hour to let them go. The longest silence yet. Then Director Jameson's voice, careful and calculating. You don't understand what you're interfering with. These creatures require specialized care, protection from public exposure, controlled environments. Releasing them puts them at greater risk, not less. They require freedom. They require dignity. And they require to be together. We're offering a compromise. Release them to our organization. We have a secure facility, proper habitat, and ethical oversight. They'll be protected, studied non-invasively, and allowed to live as close to their natural lifestyle as possible. You get to avoid a media nightmare. We get to protect an endangered species. Everyone wins. The phone line went dead. Director Jameson had hung up without agreeing to anything, and I felt my stomach drop. He's not going to release them, I said. He's going to lock this place down and move them before we can do anything. Dr. Chen was already typing furiously on her phone. Then we escalate. I'm sending everything to my contact at the Washington Post, my legal team, and 3 different animal rights organizations. If they want to fight, we'll give them one. They can't win quietly. But before she could hit send, every light in the facility went out. Complete darkness except for emergency lighting that kicked in after a few seconds, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Alarms started blaring. What's happening? Marcus asked. Lockdown protocol, Julie said grimly. They're sealing the facility. No one in, no one out, until they decide what to do with us. Except the lockdown worked both ways. If they couldn't get out, that meant the guards were trapped inside dealing with whatever security procedures were activating. Which meant for a few precious minutes, the perimeter was less defended than it had been. The loading dock, I said suddenly. That's where they brought them in. There has to be vehicle access, rolling doors, something we can get through while everyone's distracted. We ran toward the east building, staying low, using the chaos of the lockdown to mask our movement. The loading dock had a massive rolling door, partially open, probably left that way when they'd brought the mother and baby inside. We slipped through into a warehouse space filled with equipment, crates, and at the far end, a corridor that led deeper into the facility. This is insane, Marcus muttered. We're breaking into a federal black site with zero plan and zero backup. The plan is we get them out, I said. The backup is each other. Now move. We followed the corridor, following the sound of that alarm, following our instincts. And then we found them. The room with the cage. The mother was standing now, agitated by the alarms and the red emergency lighting, holding her baby close and making distressed sounds. When she saw me, her eyes widened with recognition. She remembered me, remembered that I'd helped her. We're getting you out, I told her, approaching the cage slowly. I'm so sorry this happened. I'm so sorry I led you to her. But I'm going to fix this. I promise. The cage was secured with an electronic lock, completely beyond my ability to open. But Marcus pulled out tools from his pack, including something that looked like a portable electromagnetic pulse device. This might work, or it might trigger every security protocol they have. Either way, things are about to get interesting. He activated the device, aiming it at the lock mechanism. Sparks flew. The lock mechanism sparked and smoked, and then, with a heavy clunk, It released. The cage door swung open. The mother stared at the open door like she couldn't believe it was real, like it might be a trap. "Go," I urged her. "Please, you have to go now, before they realize what's happening." She took one hesitant step forward, then another, clutching her baby, and then she looked directly at me and did something that will haunt me forever. She reached out with her free hand and touched my face, gentle despite her size and strength, a gesture of gratitude, a gesture of goodbye, a gesture that said she understood what I'd risked for her and her child. Then she was moving, faster than I expected for someone who'd given birth hours ago, fueled by adrenaline and maternal instinct. We ran with her, back through the corridor, through the warehouse, toward the loading dock and freedom. But we didn't make it. Guards were pouring into the warehouse from multiple entrances, weapons drawn, shouting orders. "Stop! Federal facility! Get on the ground now!" Dr. Chen, Marcus, Julie, and I stopped. We had no choice. But the mother didn't stop. She kept running, her baby clutched to her chest, moving with desperate speed toward that open loading dock door. "Shoot it!" someone shouted. "Don't let it escape!" And I watched in horror as 3 guards raised their rifles, aiming at the mother's back, at the baby in her arms. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw myself in front of the guards, arms spread wide, making myself a human shield between them and the fleeing mother. "No! Don't shoot! She's endangered! She's protected! You can't!" "Get out of the way!" A guard grabbed me, tried to move me, but I fought, screaming, making enough noise and chaos that the other guards hesitated. Just for a second, just long enough. The mother disappeared through the loading dock door into the darkness beyond. Gone. Free. And I felt something that might have been joy, or terror, or both, flooding through me as the guard slammed me to the ground, zip-tying my wrists behind my back. We were arrested. All 4 of us. Federal trespassing charges, interference with government operations, destruction of property, domestic terrorism. They threw everything they could at us. We spent the night in a holding facility, separated, interrogated, threatened with decades in prison. But the next morning, everything changed. Dr. Chen's automatic upload had triggered. When she didn't check in with her team by midnight, the evidence went live. My photos, her documentation, Julie's tracking data, everything. It hit the internet like a bomb. By dawn, it was trending worldwide. Government holds Bigfoot captive. Hybrid cryptid infant evidence. Black site facility exposed. News vans surrounded the federal building where we were being held. Protesters gathered. Animal rights activists. Cryptozoology enthusiasts. Even politicians started commenting, demanding investigations and transparency. By noon, we were released. All charges dropped. The government couldn't prosecute us without confirming what we'd exposed, without admitting the facility existed, without opening themselves up to the exact conversation they'd spent decades avoiding. "You're free to go," the federal prosecutor told us, looking like she'd bitten into something sour. "But Miss Morrison, Dr. Chen, stay out of federal facilities. Don't interfere with government operations again. Consider this your only warning." We walked out of that building into a media circus. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Dr. Chen gave a prepared statement about species protection and ethical treatment of cryptids. I stood beside her, exhausted, terrified, exhilarated. We'd done it. We'd exposed the truth. We'd freed the mother and baby. But at what cost? Comment worth it if you think we did the right thing. Comment too far if you think we crossed the line. Because the aftermath of what we did, it's still unfolding, even now. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the world has been in chaos. The scientific community is divided, half demanding to study the creatures, half demanding they be left alone. The government is scrambling to control the narrative, releasing carefully worded statements about investigating unconfirmed reports and protecting potentially endangered species. Environmental groups are pushing for immediate Endangered Species Act protection for Bigfoot populations.
And somewhere out there, that mother is hiding with her hybrid baby, trying to survive in a world that now knows she exists. I've received hundreds of messages, threats from people who think I've endangered national security, thank yous from people who believe in cryptid rights, death threats from trophy hunters who want that hybrid baby as a prize, job offers from news organizations who want exclusive interviews, and one message from an anonymous account that came through yesterday. It was a photo taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed the mother and baby, alive, safe, hidden somewhere deep in the wilderness, and written on the image in digital text. Thank you. We're watching over them now. I don't know who sent it. Maybe Dr. Chen's organization. Maybe another group that's been protecting these creatures for years. Maybe even sympathetic government agents who disagree with the capture protocols. But that photo told me what I needed to know. The mother and baby survived. They're free. They're protected. And the risk we took, the laws we broke, the chaos we unleashed, it was worth it. My life will never be normal again. I can't go back to being just a wildlife photographer. I'm known as the Bigfoot woman, the person who exposed the biggest cryptozoological cover-up in history. I've lost privacy, lost anonymity, lost any chance of a quiet existence. But I've gained something too. Purpose. The knowledge that I stood up for something important, something that couldn't defend itself. I saved a life. 2 lives. Maybe more, if the attention we've brought leads to real protection for these creatures.